Okay, welcome to session 10. Here we are on the program here on obviously session 10. And today we went through and just had a bit of a look in class. And those of you that are listening at home should be sending your models through to me to check today, except for those that have got an extension. Okay, so basically, yeah, today we are supposed to finish off that elevation too. And rightly so, mine is sitting there unfinished. Some of you guys are running ahead, which is good to see as well. Where we left it off last time we were here, which was before the break. We got in trouble a little bit with our title block, which I updated on the spot and put a new one on there. So this is a new title block, which the original one wasn't sort of wide enough. So all good. It's now working, and we just went in and filled it in a bit as well. Okay, so what I was going to do last time was obviously come in here in this layout. So all this time we've been working in model, which in my case it looks the same because it's all got a white background. But at the moment I just flicked over to the model tab on the bottom left here. So this is where we've been putting all our model stuff. And as you can see, we set out our elevation here, which I've got put other things in here still, including the fridge, but doesn't matter that it's not finished. Okay, so what we are doing is flicking over to layout, which most of you have done already. By doing that, it automatically puts in a viewport. I'm not sure. Some of you have been looking around, haven't got the viewport in there, so I might run through that again because I can't remember whether I actually showed you how to do it. But by default, there's one there. But I think I'll delete it and I'll show you how to put it in again. So if you had to do a new one, then how do you do it? Okay, so basically when you are in layout space, or otherwise known as paper space, you automatically are presented with this layout tab here, which doesn't exist if you're in model, so don't go looking for it. At the moment, we've got a little thing here called, it looks like a set square, and those of you that are here, I'll try and nick over to the office during a quick break, and I'll bring over a real set square, which we used to use back in the day. We used to do manual drafting. So that's, at the moment, it's just a triangle for you. I'll call it a set square, and you see what I mean when you see one. When you're in that sort of mode where the icon looks like that, it means that you are able to draw on the sheet. What we're trying to achieve next is work out a way of getting the model, which is sitting elsewhere in model space, onto the sheet. And if you can imagine, the sheet is sitting over the top, it's overlaid over the top of the model. We are going to cut out using a box cutter, a little opening, or otherwise known as a viewport, and we'll be able to see through the sheet underneath to the model, okay? And that's what you were able to see before I erased it. Now, in the layout tab, if I just click on it now, you can see that there's a few buttons, but the one we're interested in is this one here, which says rectangular in my case. Yours might look a little different, but if I expand that out, you can see there's a rectangular, there's a polygonal, and there's an object-based one. Okay, we're going to use the rectangular one. Obviously, polygonal one, you're able to shape it how you want to. And I don't think I've ever really used that, but there might be a case where you want to cut around a certain portion of your floor plan. You don't want to show the whole thing, then maybe polygonal is the way to go. Object I use quite often, usually when I blow up a detail. I might draw it up in a little circle and I'll show you that later. Okay, I'll just first of all, we'll actually just draw the viewport in there, but I mean we are going to submit 3 sheets, isn't it? If we have a look at our thing over here, just have a look over here. if we go into our practice assessment task here. Okay, so we got this thing here. So what we are going to, where's our little examples here? We're going to submit that one, as you can see it, at 1:20. And then I'll just get them all up there. This one here, this one comes out the right way, which is good. And this one's good as well. But they're going to be in black and white. They won't be in color, okay? That's a proviso here. All right, so we've got 3 sheets here. But for example, you might want to blow up a section. It's a bigger detail. You might want to blow up this section here to show not. If you're doing building construction, for example, you might want to show that window frame in a bigger detail, or some other part in here. Maybe it's this bit here. I'll show you how to do that, and that's when you might have the need to put another viewport on your sheet. These ones at the moment are just one viewport per sheet, okay? And actually it's all the same scale, 1:20. Anyway, I'll show you how to do some unusual stuff as well. Not that you need to do it for this, but it's good to know. All right, so let's go. All right, so the first thing to do actually is go back to home. And by the way, you might notice I've got my layers here. See, I've got my layers in the quick access bar up here. You might not have it, but it's easy to turn on. It's quite handy for situations like this where either you're doing hatching or you're in layout, and you just want to go back to home to just set a layout current, and you don't have to worry about getting out of that mode if you've got it up here. So really all you have to do is just click on this little arrow here on the right hand side and just tick layers, and they'll just come on. So it's handy to have there. So in my case, I'll just go straight there, and I'm going to set the viewport layer as the current layer. Just click on the name, and then now I'm using that layer because whatever I draw on that layer won't be printable. So the outline of the viewport won't be printable. So now that I've done that, I can go hit rectangular here, and really, it's just a guessing game as to how big I want to make that. And I sort of I've got a hint already because we've given you this here, and we know that we know that this takes most of that sheet. So that's what I've done. I just did that. All right, so about that much. It might be too big, it might be too small, but we can always make it bigger or smaller. Okay. So do that in that layer, and all we are actually interested in here is actually just this here in this instance. Now it looks a little bit different to that, okay, because mine is built into a proper unit house. This is just an abstract corner of a house, so it will look a bit different, but that's fine. I'll just take off the line weight here because those lines are getting a bit thick there. I'll just take that off for now. There you go. All right, hope you can see that. So at this moment, if I click on the perimeter of this on the actual viewport, like I can't click on anything here because there's nothing there. It's just like an image, all right? And it's what's underneath. If I click on this thing here, and I go down to the status bar, and just where there's these numbers here, if I click on there, it gives me all the scales. So I can set it to 1:20. Luckily 1:20 is there. Is it 1:10? Oh, it's 1:10. They're all just all mixed up. Well, they're in order, but yeah, 1:8. Is it 1:96? No. Why am I looking for 1:96? You might be thinking. Anyway, it's the old imperial thing. 1 inch is to 1 foot or something. It converts to around about 1:100, but it's not quite. All right, so 1:20 is what we want. So just click that. Here it is. Now look what happened. It's not too bad. We've got most of it in there, okay? But if I just undo that, Control Z, ideally what we should be doing, and you can imagine if this was a bigger plan with a lot of stuff around it, you can't just go in there and just click on the perimeter like I showed you and hope for the best. because it could be, I mean, what if I wanted the elevation, for example, right? I mean, next we're going to do the elevation. It could be that you want the bit that you want to look at falls outside the viewport. So if I wanted the elevation, I'm pretty well, pretty well stuffed. Where is it? How can I find it? So best practice is this. You double click inside the viewport. So you use your left mouse and double click inside here, and see how it's making it a little sort of thicker, the outline. It means you're inside the viewport, which also means you're inside the model, which also means you can do some damage, like delete stuff, move stuff from the model. So we're not in here to start editing the model. We're in here to just position it to where we want it and size it up to the right scale. Okay, so first of all, in my case, if you've got this line here, we don't actually need it. We can just turn that off, delete it, sorry. I just put that in there to show you where I thought they were taking this section through for this elevation. So I'll just get rid of that. But yeah, so what we want is to basically get this, get the bit that we're interested in roughly around about the center of that viewport. So that's a point of interest there. And then we can go through and size it up using this system here. Now, this system here works with when you're inside the viewport. Like, can you see that I've got my crosshair is restricted within that viewport boundary? Okay, so that means I'm in model space. Also, can you see that that set square has disappeared from the left-hand side, and it's actually now it's replaced with the icon here, the X and the Y. All right, so that's the difference between, so you know whether you're inside the model or we are actually, when you're drawing something or when you're if you put in text or if you bring in some blocks in, you would know, and you need to know where you are, because if you're intending for the text to go on the sheet, then you need to make sure you're not in there, but rather you're out there. Okay, so you need to know how to tell the difference as to which space you're in. Okay, so for now we need to go in here. All right, and then we're going to change this to 1:20. Now you see that this is going to line up a little better than it did before. Okay, now it's not going to be perfect because depending how much you want to see, you might need to still pan it across a bit, all right? But you've got to be careful. Here you are. You've got to be careful when you're using the scroller to pan, in other words, holding this down, this middle mouse button down, you've got to be careful you don't actually scroll it at the same time as when you click down. So if you think you are not, if you don't trust yourself, in other words, that you're not going to scroll, use this little hand thing here. All right, which is a pan. That is used with the left mouse button, and then you can just use the left mouse button to scroll across and get everything in view, and then you can right click and exit. I mean, if you do use the scroller to pan, holding it down like this, just when you finish, just check down here where the scale is, and if it says anything else other than 1:20, it means you have accidentally scrolled a bit and it's giving you some other ratio. All right. Okay. So this is pretty much right now. In my case, I've got probably a little more than I needed. If we have a look at this one here, well, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's basically what you want, how much you want to show. Okay, so let's have a look. All right, so going here. So now what I've got to do is, the first thing I do after I've got my scale right is to lock it. So in my case here, a couple of it from the scale, I've got this lock here. Has everybody got that? Yeah. Just click it so it gets shaded in blue, which means now it's locked. And what it means now is that I can scroll up and down and I won't change my scale. Let me just show you what happens if I didn't have it locked. and I use the scroller in here, I've just basically stuffed up my scale. It's gone. So it's over here is giving me some sort of a ratio. All right. That's because I've been scrolling in here without it being locked. Okay. So let's put it back to 1:20 and immediately lock it. You can't immediately lock it unless, as I said, you got everything you want in view. Then you can lock it. Okay. Okay, so lock it because I can't do any more panning after that. That's it. All right, to unlock it. Okay, so then what we're going to do is just come out of the paper space by double clicking on the outside here. And now you can decide how much you want to see. So for example, I might say, okay, well, I want to grab this and just bring it across. I only want to see that much of that. Possibly there's nothing to do with kitchens on past the fridge. So I'm just going to maybe put it here. But look what happened. It went to the midpoint of that. So I'm in a bit trouble now. So I need to go back and work out how to get that just to about there. How do I do that? Well, I can take off my object snaps. Are they on? Yes, they're on. Or I can move up a bit. It might make it a bit smaller. So that's not what I want. So the only way really is to, depending what you've got in your object snaps, it may work, but it might also not work. So I'll just take off the object snaps for a minute and just bring it back to there. And that's my kitchen. I can just even do this one now a bit more. All right, so from in here now, we've got this funny line going through here, which is the roof, which you don't actually want anyway. So how do we fix that? All right, basically, I'll wait for you to. Oh, what else are we missing from in here? We're missing hatching. I haven't got my hatching in it, but I'll check. Yeah. So, okay. So just a second. I'll just pause here, make sure everyone's all right. Okay. So we've managed to put that in here. We haven't done dimensions yet, but we will soon. But just so you understand a little more about the viewports and to explain what some of these other ones do, I was going to do show you how to use this object one. For example, we might want to blow up an area here, so see it in more detail, whatever it might be. It could be this knob here, okay? So we might want to blow that section up. So you say, okay, well, I'm going to put it somewhere. So for example, you might drag this across and you're going to blow it up and put it up here. So just it's bigger sort of, it might be 1:1 scale. It's such a small little thing. You want to blow it up so they can see the detail of that knob. So you say, okay, well, I'll draw a circle. Literally, that's what you do. You draw a circle there. You have to guess how big it is at 1:1, and I think it was like 30 millimeters, so that's probably a little too big. Anyway, so I've done that circle, but that circle is just a circle. It's on the layer viewport, but it's not a viewport as such. Okay, so then you go to the layout, and you go to here, and you pick up the object viewport. Allows you to select an object, and turns that object into a round, whatever that shape of that object. And if it was hexagonal, it will come out hexagonal. All right, so we then will double click in here, zoom up, and just probably come out and zoom up a little more because such a small little detailed thing. I want to just maybe get the whole thing to the screen here, and double click in here now, and just pan it down until it's in the center. Zoom it up a bit more. So that's the thing we want to focus on. And now we go here and change the scale to whether it be 1:2, 1:1. Let's try 1:2. It's about that big. You might want it 1:1, real size. There you go. So we've done that. So that's the detail of that section there. Now sometimes what you might see on drawings is this. There might be another circle here, like that, and then they draw a couple of lines here showing that it's been expanded out. So the way to draw those lines is this way. You draw a line, and then you go shift right click, and you use something we haven't really used before, which is tangent here. Right, that attaches to a circle like that, and then shift right click and tangent again to there. Enter, finish that line, enter to start the line, shift right click tangent again, shift right click tangent again, and go over here. Okay, so now if we go print now, look at our setup, it's monochrome, brilliant, all of that should be set up because we did that last time. We'll have a look at this here. This is what we get, all right? Now, that's not what we wanted to get because the circle is gone, right? Because the circle is actually, and the lines are actually on the viewport layer, which doesn't print. So in this case, it's an exception where you put the, see when I click on there, because it was originally created from a circle, it actually keeps the circle there as well as the viewport. So, but it doesn't actually print it. So I think I have to go to the viewport and then change that to be, put it on a text layer or something like that. And hopefully that will print. That one and the circle. Let's see how we go. It didn't seem to have changed, but let's have a look. It should be. Let me just put a crossing window, make sure I get everything, and make it all text. There you go. So if I plot now, I've typed in plot enter. It's the same thing as clicking the print button and preview. That's it. So that's the sort of thing you want to do. Blowing it up, 2:1:1. All right. Okay, so that's something that you might need to do in your career at some stage. All right, done. Now we don't really need that, so I'll just erase it because we don't need it. But that's how you do it. All right, so let's go back and put the dimensions on and things like that. All right, so how do we do the dimensions? Now, there's two ways of doing it. One, some of you have already done them, but in model space, and the other way is put it on here on the sheet. Also, before the break, I said, oh, look, that line there is a bit unusual. How do we get rid of that? All right, so let's get rid of that first. Double click inside the viewport, all right, so that you are getting the X and Y icon, and then you click on this line here because you might not remember what layer it's on. But if you click on it, it automatically takes you to the layer name, which is easy then to locate. And you click on here, and then you use not the first one, not the second one, but the third one. The third one is freeze the layer in the current viewport only, all right? Because somewhere else, in another viewport, say you're doing a roof plan, you might want that layer to be on. If I switched it off here, or using the sun, it's a global off. It will be off from everywhere, model space, and every other viewport we create. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep that because we might want to do a roof plan. So we just do viewport freeze in this current viewport only, that one. And that's gone now. And let's double click out here, and we're done. All right, so now we're going to do the dimensions. Okay, so basically we need to set the dimension layer as a current layer. Now, you can do the dimensions two ways, as I said. One way to go to model space and do it in there. But if you do it in model space, you have to allow a little more room around this to do it in. Now, in my situation, if I did that, I'll be in a bit of trouble because if I go into here and I put the dimensions around here because it's a kitchen I'm dimensioning, it will mean that I have to, well, I'll do one so you can see. So I put a dimension, I just click on here, linear dimension, specify first. So turn on my object snaps because I turned them off before. Say I put a dimension here to there, and I want to put it there. Okay, so I'll come back into my view. Don't worry about what I've just done. I'll show you how to do that carefully. See what happened here now? I can't see the dimension, so I need to then make my viewport wider because the dimension is in model space. But you can see now I'm seeing more of the laundry, which I don't really want to see. Now it's okay if, as the example shows here, all you've drawn was those two walls and there's nothing else around, you can expand as much as you like in model space, and there's no laundry, there's nothing around it, there's no door on the other side, and it's all clean around, you can put whatever you like. But in the real world, perhaps, your kitchen is part of a bigger house, so this technique is probably better in that situation. So in my technique, I would not put the dimensions in model space in this instance, but if you want to, this is the way you do it. I'll show you. Okay, so I'll just undo this. So for me to put the dimension in the model space, I double clicked on the outside of this, on the perimeter of the viewport, and I went into it. Now, why did I do that? What is the difference between going there and going to model directly? It looks pretty much the same, except for that one layer I turned off. Okay, this. It's basically giving you the model space. It's showing you the model space the way it looks in the viewport, which is with that layer turned off. Now, in a more complicated drawing, it's really handy because you're turning off a lot more than just one layer to create a specific plan. For example, whether it might be a footing plan or electrical plan or furniture plan, you'll be turning off a lot of other stuff. All right, so that is the only difference. But as we worked out, we start putting dimensions around this here. It clutters this. It wants us to then expand that viewport in paper space, which then will end up showing inevitably the laundry and other things that we don't want to show. Perhaps a door over here, which we don't want to show. It's not part of the kitchen. All right. So for that reason, I won't put my dimensions in model space in my case, but you can if you've got the simplistic version that it was suggested through the PDFs. It won't make any difference. Personally, I prefer the other way around anyway, so I'll delete that. Now, the way I went into that viewport was by into this model space through the viewport, was by double clicking on the perimeter of the viewport. And you can see here that we've got this thick light blue outline. That suggests that we're not in model through model space, but we're in model through a viewport. Sorry? So if you're in that viewport, yeah. You still edit the model? Yeah, for sure. Here you can edit the model, and a lot of people do that. It is a very good technique when you've got a complicated model that's got a lot of layers on top of themselves. Like you can imagine if you've got your footing plan, your furniture plan, your electrical plan on top of all that, which I have for my other class. It's best to then, if you're concentrating on just looking at the construction plan, which is this, to just go through the viewport that you've already set up, and you've already turned off the site plan, you've turned off every other thing that you don't need, so you're just seeing the floor plan. Yes, so it's suggested you do that. Yeah, for sure. Good question. Yeah, so to get out of this, two ways. The way you're going to remember and the way you're not going to remember. The one you're not going to remember is by finding this button here, which I can hardly find myself, this little button here. And the way you're going to remember is this. You go in here, it's easy. You remember, you double click on that, you go in there. Then just click anywhere else. Click model, for example, then come back to layout, it drops you out. Just by toggling, by clicking on this, it drops you back to how you should be. So if you can't remember where to find that button, just click on these tabs and it'll just drop you out. Okay, fine. So good. So now that I've sort of talked about that very briefly, I'll double click out here and I'll begin some dimensioning. All right, so basically we just got to make sure we put enough dimensions for people to build this thing. And looking at this thing here, what have they dimensioned here? Well, the dimension in the window, which I'm not sure if it's part of the kitchen, but anyway, what they will need to know is where this cupboard, this thing finishes, the joinery. That's important, that dimension up here. We can put the window in, I suppose. It doesn't hurt, but that's more of a construction thing. It's not really an interior thing, but this is important. Remember, we're just dimensioning the cupboards, not necessarily how to build and where to put stuff for as far as the construction goes. and the window is part of the construction. But anyway, let's have a look. Now this is going to get a little confusing for me because my dimensions are actually red and so is this viewport. So I'm just going to change the color of the viewport to be something lighter. I'm going to go for color 9, just really something light. There you go. You can also turn it off if you want, but then if you want to move it, it's not there, so that's the only thing. Okay. So the dimensioning, we use the linear. First of all, we go into annotate tab because it's got a bigger, wider range of buttons you can use. So in the annotate, we can do text and we can do dimensions as well. We can do notes with arrows and things like that. So let's go with, now we use a linear dimension to do horizontal and vertical dimensions. And we can, if we expand that out, we can use the aligned one. If we had any at 45, for example, you use the aligned one. Right? But I don't have any here, I don't think. So we'll just go with linear. All right, so I will mimic what they've done in this example here, which they actually, well, okay, so you've got to be careful. I'm not sure why they did that. The way this is going is showing us that there's a few mix-ups here. Okay, for start when we're dimensioning, we start from the most inner bit first, and that's the first line of dimension. Then we move back one step. So, for example, if we look at this one over here, this one on the left, okay, they started with okay, our dimension. Well, the dimension these. And then the dimension, the overall. It doesn't make too much sense. Let me just show you on here. If I was dimensioning the whole building, for example, what I would do. Okay, let me get out of that dimension command. There. So if we're dimensioning the whole building, we'll break it up in 4. It's halfway through there, and halfway vertically. So, for example, this wall here, the bathroom one, will be my first line of dimensions. The bathroom, the passage there, and the width of this room. So I'll put one line of dimensions up here. Then I'll move back one step. I'll put an imaginary line through the toilet. So I'll pick up where the width of the toilet is. So I'll put another line of dimensions through here, which will pick up the toilet width, the width of the passage at that point, and there's a width of that which is repeated. Okay. If it's repeated, we won't do it the second time around. We'll just keep the first one or the second one and choose. The rule is not to dimension anything twice, like the same thing twice. All right. So then I'll move back and I'll dimension laundry here, but then the width of this doesn't ever change. So again, So I'll end up with something with perhaps the laundry up here with the width of the kitchen. Then I'll move back and I'll do the toilet and that only. So there'll be a little one here and another little one here with a passage and the bathroom. Now for the bedroom, I'll pick it up on the other side. Bedroom here. Again, I wouldn't bother with this. It's the same width. And probably the overalls after that. I'll put an overall over here. And then again, the same way the other way. I'll dimension all these rooms on this side and all these rooms, which is only one, on this side. All right. So that's the idea of dimensioning very quickly. So looking at this one here, it sort of confuses me a bit because it's actually dimensioning parts of the building as well in this instance, which really we shouldn't be because we're not doing that. We're not actually interested in telling the joiner where to put the window. So I might just leave that out of the equation for now and just concentrate on just dimensioning for construction of the kitchen cupboards. All right, so let's see how we go. And apart from all that, having said what I just told you, if I was to dimension this, put a dimension for this wall, the wall is the most outer thing in the window. So that dimension here should really be up where this line is. Up just below that overall one. And so the dimension width here of the cupboard should this one here, the 3694, is the first one to put in, which is locating the width of that. And actually, I will be putting another one. I mean, they put it down here, which is fine. yeah, we could put the width there, I suppose. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the width of that, and of course then we've got the shelf width as well. We never had that dimension in floor plan, and I think we should do it in floor plan. I think it's in elevation somewhere or not. Yeah, it's in elevation here. So again, you know, where do you dimension it? Yeah, I mean it's there, so it's doubling up. So you got to be careful you don't double up as well. All right, so let's go and have a look. First dimension, we'll go to linear, and I'm going to do the width of this one here. Personally, I would have done that. I would have put in one here. Let me just, yeah, there, the endpoint. I would do that. Now, where do you put it? Good question. Just the standard says about 12 millimeters away to 15, but really in some cases we need to go a little more. I mean, 12 millimeters is probably it's too close to that. I'll go about there. Now we might have to move the whole thing down, but we've got enough room for now. And then what I'm going to do next is dimension the overall. All right, so I want to. Then I'm going to dimension to the corner there to give me that 600. So, and it's a little different to what's on the final one, but that's I'm hoping a little more organized. Okay, so let's. So after I put the first one, so do you want to see that again, or you've done that bit already? You all right with that? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then after I put the first one, I press continue. All right, I don't click this linear again. All right, continue, and that just continues from the last one, and then I can just go to that corner of that wall there and click it there. And if I had more, I would just be clicking. That we'll have more when we do the vertical ones, but for this one I've only got one more. That's it. So enter to finish, and that's where it's going. I can probably make this a little smaller. Yeah. All right. So that's the first one. The next one, I'm going to do the overall of that width. So I'm going to, now, what I'm going to do is a little technique here, which takes a little bit of getting used to. If I click down here where it says continued, if I click down, there's a thing called baseline. Baseline. If I click that, now, I don't want to continue from there. I want to continue, I want to select, see if it allows me to do it. This one here, there you go. Select it on that side of that dimension, and it picks up from where that began. And I'm hoping to go down here and click at the overall there, and then escape. Now, look what happened. It's not quite what I thought would happen. It was supposed to put this at the end of that there, so it actually spaces it out for me automatically. But for some reason, this went wrong, and I'm not sure why it went wrong. It could be that the I suppose the inherited file is not right. So I just want to double check something here why it went wrong. Modify. All right, baseline. Yeah, this is the problem. This is the problem here. 3.75. This wasn't changed. So this should be the sum of the 6 plus the 2. I think 6 plus the 2, 8. I think it's 8. 8. But to 8. Okay. Let me just try that again. I just changed that there, and if it works, we can all do that. Otherwise, what you're doing is this. Otherwise, you're doing this. I'll show you another way of doing it, which is what I usually do. This is the sort of the keep it simple, stupid method, the KISS method. So this is linear. If I didn't have that thing set up so I can do this baseline, I would still do the normal dimension linear to there. But then when I was to place it, I will come here and I'll zoom right in until I see the bottom of the top dimension touching the top of the bottom one there. Then I'll just eyeball it in and drop it there. That's where I want it to finish. But the other way, it's more accurate, it's exact. It does it for me using the actual command. So that's how we want it to look. All right, but I'm going to try and do it now that I fixed that bit there, and I'll re-show you how to fix yours using this, the baseline. Okay, baseline, select over here, and then we're going to go to there, and I just escape, and that's more exact. It's right on. Okay. If you have to do more, like some dimension more over here, you just go after that. You go continue, and you just keep going over here and dimension more stuff. Now, what I did in that little change there, I went into the settings here of my dimensions, and I went to general, which I'm in, modify, and I changed under the lines option, I changed the baseline spacing to be 8 rather than the default of 3.75. Right, so that automates. Imagine if you had quite a few to do, it automates that process a little more for you. Our scale of works here is very minimal, very small. 8 millimeters or 8, yeah. Oops. All right. So the next is to do the horizontal up here with the wall. The thing is, yeah, I did probably cut that out if I hadn't decided whether I was going to put the wall in at the time when I did that. But we can do. We can put a dimension up here. The problem with this one here, we need to start from the other end. When we're doing this, whatever it's called, this one here, the baseline, I think we need to select. See, it goes from, by default, it starts from where we left off. Now you got to go select and maybe begin it from this side, I hope, of that line. Then come up here. That's if you want to dimension the whole wall. But they just tried to position the window thing in this situation here. So we don't really need to do the whole wall. Let's have a look. What do we? Where is it? This one. This one here. Oh yeah, they did do the whole wall as well, but they also did that. So I've got a few extra lines of dimensions. Well, let's first of all, I will just do up to the window, and then what I'm going to do next is escape. All right, so I got it up to the window. It's all looking good. Then I'm going to go and change over from the baseline to continue, and I'm going to click on the end of that window, and then to the end of that, and then escape. I think they've got that dimension in, haven't they? Oh, look at that. That's 1610. Mine is 1704, so it doesn't matter. If we've got 1500 in there, yes, we've got something right. 1490, yes, that's all right. They don't have a door there. My door is a bit further away. It doesn't matter as long as you dimensioned it to the end of your wall. Okay, it doesn't have to be the same number. Okay, it is a weird number though, 1704. All right. Now the overall, which is what they've got up here, 4600, which mine might be something different. Is again we're going to go here and we're going to go baseline and we're going to pick up from select, click select down here, we'll select this end and then we're going to go to the end of that wall, and that's the overall. Now that's, as you can see, way over the top of our, in my case it went over the top of the sheet. It's not going to, well, it's not nice, so I need to move it down. So I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to just go to move, home, move, and just click somewhere, and just bring it down until the whole thing has come down to about there. So moving the whole thing, including the viewport. That way they all stay connected. Otherwise, the dimensions will become disassociated from the wall. So yeah, that 1704 is a bit of a worry, isn't it? How do we come up with that? Well, because it's the same. I must have given you some dimensions, but if at this point here you come and say, well, it's a stupid dimension, you can change it. But I'll show you how to change it. There might be some reasoning that we are from the corner, for example, 406, that's another stupid dimension, right? So you want to move over 4 millimeters, say to the left, so it's 17 around 1704. This is what you can do. Check this out. Stretch command, okay? You go stretch, Now I'm in model now, okay? I'm not in the dimension area. I go stretch under home, I go stretch, S for stretch, or click the stretch command, and I do a crossing window, which is the one from the right hand side to the left over the door part of the wall, just like that. All right, grabbing all of that, not getting the fridge or anything like that. All right, and I go enter, and then the base point, I click somewhere, make sure I've got ortho on, which I have, and I go to the left 4 millimeters, enter. Now let's see what happens to our dimensions. In fact, if I go to layout, look at that, it automatically updated, all right, which is good. All right, and they're a bit more sensible, aren't they? All right, I'm going to quickly, for the last 5 minutes or 2 minutes, throw in some dimensions on this side. Now remember, we don't need to worry about the 600 down here because we already put it up here, so it's a little different setup to what we have here. I don't need that. I don't need the wall width, really, honestly. That's for building the house. I'm not interested in this. So I'm just going to put in some of these dimensions here. This one here is actually useful as well because they're locating the sink. So that one I will put in just like they have it here. To there, and I'm just going to drop it down there. All right, that's somewhere like that, all by itself. Hopefully they can see it. And I'm going to throw in now linear dimension. I'm going to throw in now what have they got? Oops, they got 18. Oh, they got. I'm going to start off from the 18, or from the corner here. Sorry, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to drop this on the first one over here. Then I'm going to go to continue. All right, so go back to annotate, continue. And I'm just simply going to be clicking on the endpoint of each there, or the intersection here. Hopefully I won't miss any there, and they will just keep happening on the left as I'm clicking on the right, hopefully, and escape. There they are. Okay, so I don't know if it's the same as this guy's here, but yeah, 39, yep, all good. So the next one to put in is that overall, and I'm done. So it's going to go the overall. I'm going to go with this technique of baseline. And again, I'm going to select because it's picking up the wrong one. And I'm going to go from, oh, hang on. Yeah, I'm going to go from actually this dimension, maybe, if it lets me. I don't know which one. There, it got me. It got it. So I'm just going to put it there and escape. Done. Now, it has sort of automatically thrown these numbers on top, which is an improvement from previous versions of AutoCAD. But this one here is a bit of a problem. That 100 is interfering with my 18, so I've got to move them away maybe a bit. Maybe that over there. That 18 I might just push over this side a bit. So you might have to do some tidying up. This 39 again, just click it and then select the blue bit in there and just drag it down a bit like that, or to the other side, whichever one. There's no other ones interfering here, so we are pretty good. This one is almost a little too tight there, but that's okay. All right, so we'll leave it here. Pretty much I've done all the dimensions. We haven't put any text in here, but yeah, we run out of time. Unless you're not catching a bus, I'll very quickly click on this multi-leader here and just show you how to do text. I'm not going to even care what it says. Make sure you're in the right layer. I'm not in the right layer. Just put in stove, something like that, and just click it. Now stove, and I'll write a few other things here like this, just to show you this bit here. See how we've got this arrow here? We can drag the arrow ahead, and then it just wraps it around. Okay, so if you have to write a bigger note that you want to wrap around, use those arrows and you wrap around like that. Now of course I'm in the wrong layer, or that should be in the text layer before you started. Okay, so I just had that in the wrong layer. I was just to quickly show you how to do that. So that's one way of writing text. We've got some text here as well, so these ones here are a bit different. For example, like this, sink, I'll just call it sink. Again, I got on the wrong layer, but it's as simple as that. It's the arrows here are not colored in, but my ones are. So that's fine. You might want to move this up a bit if it's interfering too much, but that's about all. All right, I'll leave it there and we'll continue next week. Thank you for today, and yeah, we'll see you next week, and we'll finish off the elevation and other things like that. All right, thank you.